Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 2, Episode 21. Today is Sunday, May the 17th, 2015. My name is Graham Perro. With me, as usual, is Melissa Daphne, but Tyler Fitch was not available tonight. So, as a special guest host, we have Jim Flannery. So, Jim, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into lacrosse.
Okay, well, currently living in Lethbridge, Alberta, moved here over the summer. Discovered lacrosse in 2002, got out to a Roughnecks game, got free tickets, and just went to see what it was all about and fell in love immediately. So that's kind of what got me interested in the sport. Subsequent to that, I've been writing for In Lacrosse We Trust for about 2 years, also with StadiumJourney.com. So I've been doing a fair bit of writing and pushing lacrosse as much as I can, just trying to get the word out there so that everybody can love it as much as me.
Excellent. That's exactly what me and Melissa and Tyler are doing, actually. So, yeah. Okay, so a couple games this past weekend. Obviously, games one of the division finals. We had Edmonton and Calgary, and we had Toronto and Rochester. And I'm sure if you're watching the show, you already know the results, but just in case, Edmonton beat Calgary in Game 1, and Rochester beat Toronto. And we will discuss those games in a little more detail later. What we wanted to start with, just for fun, was what was our biggest surprise of the 2015 season? And I know we had a bunch at the beginning. There, the first couple of weeks, we had Rochester 0-2, Edmonton 0-2, Calgary 0-2, and the New England Black Holes were 2-0. And so we were going, okay, well, when is this going to get back to normal? And it kind of got back to normal after a while. I guess I'll start first, seeing as I'm already talking. One of my biggest, I have two. And I was going back and forth between what the two biggest surprises were. And for me, the biggest surprise, there's sort of a 1 and 1A. The first one was Calgary. Like I said, they started 0-2. So did Rochester and Edmonton. But Rochester and Edmonton figured out whatever was their problem and continued the way we expected them to. The rest of the season was fine for them, if not better than fine. Calgary didn't have quite as much luck. Obviously, we all know at this point they started 0-6, and they did better after that. But it's not like they turned it around and said, "Okay, that's it. We're better now." They alternated a few games, lost a couple in late March, early April. Finally seemed to pull it together in April, where they were 4-1, and that one loss was to Edmonton. So they certainly put up a good fight there. But yeah, unlike the Rush and the Nighthawks, they didn't turn it around right away once they started winning. And just the fact that a team as good as Calgary, with almost no changes from the previous year, could have the lousy season that they did. That would be probably my number one biggest surprise. And 1A would have to be the outstanding year from Brett Hickey. I do remember seeing some WLA fans near the beginning of the year saying, "Watch out for this guy, he's going to be great." But you hear that all the time. People who have a great year or even a great career in minor lacrosse or in junior A or B or whatever letters you want to throw at them, and then they get the NLL and it's just not the same. So whenever you hear somebody saying, "Oh yeah, he was tearing up the whatever it is league," watch for him. Sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. He had 2 or 3 seasons in Vancouver where he played a handful of games. It's not like he played the full seasons, but it just wasn't working. And the Rock picked him up for nothing. It wasn't even a trade, I don't think. I think they signed him as a free agent. And suddenly there's 50 goals. So, I mean, did people see it coming? Some say they did, but like I said, you hear that all the time. But I don't think very many people honestly figured he'd be a 50-goal guy in his first year. So those would be my two biggest surprises. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, this is tough because, like you said, there's actually been quite a few surprises. Calgary starting 0-6, Mammoth being number two and basically about 500, Minnesota trading off two big name players, one of them their captain, the number of backup goalies that we saw take the starting position. I mean, it's been kind of all over the place for surprises. I was surprised by a lot this year. Um, where to start? uh, I think honestly, when it really comes down to, because while it was surprising, it is at least in the realm of possibilities for Calgary to go 0-6, as it is with any team in this league. I think Minnesota trading Suter was probably the biggest whoa, holy cow, what did they do moment that I think is going to have longer reaching effects than they really thought. So I think I will go with that trade as my big holy cow WTF moment. What about you, Jim?
Well, I think I tend to agree with both of you about the Calgary collapse at the start of the season. Uh, Being one goal away from winning a championship last year to the way things started out this year was a pretty significant drop off, obviously. And it seemed to me like a lot of things that typically didn't go wrong for them were at the start of the year. But the biggest one, the thing I think had the biggest impact was that Mike Poulin just never got it together. Uh, he's the only goaltender other than Matt Vink to win the goaltender of the year in the last 4 years. So he's expected to be able to step up when the rest of the team isn't. And that simply didn't happen. Later in the season, as Frankie Chiliano got more comfortable, he got better and better, and he really, really looked good last night in spite of the loss. But seeing Mike Poulin just not have it this year was a shocker for me.
Yep, that was a surprise for me as well. And like you said, Melissa, a number of backup goalies, particularly Giuliano, stepping into the starting role, and Giuliano just had a really good season. I actually had him on my top five goaltender of the year candidates for Islandor as we're doing the awards as we do every year. Um, so let's get on to the games. Luckily for me, and for Jim for that matter, all of the playoff games are on TSN in Canada, or one of the 5 TSN channels. So we were able to watch all of them. So I managed to watch both of these games. Um, and first, I have to say, as we were just talking about goalies, Edmonton announced the 3 stars right after the game, and I meant to look at who I don't remember who they were. I think one was Aaron Bold. I think one was Zach Greer, and probably Matthews was the other one.
I think Matt's
But
number one, yeah.
yep. So the fact that Chiliana was not even in their top 3, I thought was silly. I tweeted at one point during the game, doesn't matter how this game ends out, Chiliano's the number 1 star. And seeing as they didn't win the game, I guess I can give the number 1 star to Aaron Bold, who also had an outstanding game. But Chiliano should definitely have been one of the top 3. So that's what I thought. Both goalies were outstanding. And interestingly enough, both teams went over 20 minutes without scoring. Calgary was the first 21 minutes of the game before they got on the board. But then, where did it go? From 28 seconds into the third quarter until 6 minutes into the fourth quarter, Edmonton didn't score. So, and that's when Calgary made. Well, I was going to say that's when Calgary made their comeback. That's when they made most of their comeback. They scored 3 goals in that span, but they didn't actually tie it until after that. Curtis Dixon part of the way into the fourth, and then Dane Doby tied it up with less than 3 minutes left, or just over 3 minutes left. But that tie only remained for about a minute before Ben McIntosh put Edmonton ahead, and then Zach Greer scored another 37 seconds after that. to give Edmonton the win. This was a really close game. It looked as if all Calgary needed was a little bit of a spark, and suddenly they'd be on a run and take over. Of course, that's hard to do against the Edmonton defense and against Aaron Bold. But yeah, I mean, a very exciting game, very close game. Could have gone either way, especially near the end once Calgary tied it up. I'm almost surprised that tying it up wasn't the spark that they needed. And you almost expected, as soon as they tied it up, okay, that's it. Now Sean Evans is going to take over and Dixon's going to take over and they're going to score 5 goals in 3 minutes. But it never happened. But like I said, Edmonton's defense, hard to do that against. Sorry, I'm starting to choke now. Jim, you can take over. What did you think of this game?
Well, I have to agree with you about Chiliano. I think that game could have easily been 15, 16 goals for Edmonton had Frankie not been on his game. He had a couple of breakaways that he was able to make stops on. He had a couple of guys right on the doorstep that he was able to make stops on. Right up until those last 2 minutes with those last 2 goals, he seemed to be making the key stops that had to be made to keep Calgary in the game. Yeah, unfortunately, it just didn't go Calgary's way. But that just seems to be the nature of the Edmonton Rush in the last couple of seasons, that they get things done. Their defense, I really was looking at that or on Friday in particular. There's just simply no room to operate. Guys were not getting free for good shots. If it wasn't for guys like Dixon or Dane Doby just going into places where they have no business being and managing to make something out of nothing, they might have been even worse off. So credit to Calgary for managing to put some goals on the board, but credit to Edmonton for making it that difficult. So that was very entertaining lacrosse, in my opinion, on both ends.
Melissa, how about you? Did you see this one?
Yes, I did. This game was awesome. This is what when you think of what a playoff game should be, this is the kind of game you really expect. That just back and forth, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat going, okay, who's going to win? Who's going to win? Who's going to win? Because it just is so intense. And one team's out of it for a little while, and then they come back, and it's tied, and then on this, So yeah, I love this game. I was really surprised Evans never scored. He scored once, and he had 4 assists. So the fact that the Edmonton defense, which is I think is the top in the league, shut him down pretty much, was huge, I think. Especially as Cody Jamieson was injured in the first half. I do think that was a spark for Calgary a little bit, and it seemed like it took the wind out of Edmonton's sails. And so I think they came back really well from that, but it looked like they definitely faltered after that happened.
I think you're getting a little confused there, Melissa.
Am I?
Cody Jamieson plays for the Nighthawks. He wasn't in this game.
Yes, you're right. I was thinking something's not sounding right here, so okay, yeah. Rewind, reverse.
Edmonton was missing Robert Church, so it was kind of both they and the Nighthawks were missing one of their top scorers.
That's right. So yeah, I just mixed up the games. They were both so good. They were both so exciting. And it doesn't help that I put my notes on the wrong spot. But it looked like Edmonton was going to run away with it for a little while. The fact that Calgary took over 20 minutes to score, it really looked like it was just going to be a blowout. But they came back, and then it seemed like Edmonton took their foot off the gas a little bit. But I was just amazed. Both goalies played really well. It was a chippy game. It was an exciting game. For the most part, the refs let them play. There was definitely some controversy, I think, with both games. But it was awesome. It makes me really excited for next week's game. I mean, since that one's going to decide it all, really. Because, I'm sorry, I can't consider Game 3 anything more than an overtime period. And that's really, I kind of expected maybe 2 overtime periods. So, should be exciting.
All right. Let's head on to Game 2 of the weekend, I suppose. Game 1 in the Eastern Final. Toronto taking on Rochester. This game was in Rochester. as Toronto holds the number 1 seed, so they're hosting Game 2 and the mini game if there is one. Now, I did notice on the league website they were talking about this, and they basically said that if Toronto wins Game 2, there will be a tiebreaker period. I don't think they referred to it as a mini game. Maybe they just changed the name of it. But they used something other than mini game to describe the extra thing. Like, it sounds like the same thing. It's a 10-minute period, and then we go to sudden death if that's still tied. But they used a different name, and I'm pretty sure they called it a tiebreaker period rather than mini game. So maybe they just didn't like the wording of it. But anyway, yeah, this was another really exciting game, like Melissa was saying. Brandon Miller was really good in the Toronto net for the first few minutes. Toronto took a lead 2 minutes in, and Rochester didn't score until 9 minutes in. Then Miller kind of, I don't want to say fell apart, but he didn't have the greatest time for the next, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so, as Rochester put in 5 goals. And they mentioned on the broadcast that that would probably be a good time. I think if he'd given up one more goal, then he would have been pulled and Rose would have been put in, which, as we've discussed on the show before, is a pretty good problem for the Rock to have, in that they have probably the best 1-1A goaltending tandem in the league, and they have enough confidence in both goaltenders that if one of them's just not performing, they can easily pull him and put the other one in. And a team like Edmonton, and this is nothing against Tyler Carlson, but when you've got somebody like Aaron Bold playing all the time and playing so well all the time, if he has an off night and you put Carlson in there, he may not have played a game for weeks. So it's hard to get any confidence in him because he just never plays. And it's hard for him to be going in there cold because he's playing during practices and stuff, I'm sure, but that's not the same as a game. So when you go weeks without playing a game, it's got to be hard to get in there cold. So the Rock don't have that problem with 2 number 1 goalies. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble here. The Nighthawks had 1 million block shots and interceptions. I don't know how many times the Rock would be passing the ball around and a Nighthawk would just stick his arm out, stick his stick in the way, and grab the ball and take off. And there were at least a couple of times where the Nighthawk did that and almost didn't even realize. It's like, oh crap, I have the ball. And it was just amazing how often they did this. Jim Veltman used to be really good at doing that. I remember loving to watch him play. But you might see that every now and again, but it was rare. This one, there must have been 5 or 6 of them in this game. Plus, like I said, the block shots, people just getting in the way. So there's just saves that Matt Vince didn't have to make because the ball never got to him. Cody Jamieson, as Melissa was saying, though it was the wrong game, left. I think it was only like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes into the first quarter. I think he fell down or he tried to turn around and just did something to his ankle. And you could see him. There's nobody within 10 feet of him. It's not like somebody hit him or stepped on him or anything. He just got up or fell in a weird way and got up and literally hopped off the field. Went right to the dressing room, and we never saw him again. The announcers were saying that he was on crutches and his ankle was all taped, so that's certainly not a good sign for him. But Brad Self, did he ever step up? Holy moly. I think they said he had 6 goals all season, and he scored 3 in this game. He was everywhere. He's generally a transition player, so he's not usually part of the offense anyway, but he can score. And yeah, he led the game. I was looking this over earlier today. He led the game in loose balls with 16. Nobody else on either team had more than 8, so he doubled everybody in loose balls. And he had 3 goals and 3 assists, which tied him with Rob Hellier for the lead in points. So, I tweeted during this game as well, I'd almost rather have Jameson back because Self was doing everything. The game winner was unbelievable. Dan Dawson was fighting off 2 defenders right in front of the net, almost dropped his stick, managed to keep hold of that, grab the ball, turn around, and then dive across the crease like he loves to do, and buried it behind Miller. There was no question he wasn't in the crease. It was just a beautiful goal. He later said in the interview, "I got lucky with a loose ball." Um, yeah, if you want to call that luck, sure, but that's why he's one of the best players in the league and has been for years. So that was just a beautiful goal, and it was 30 seconds left. I remember thinking there was enough time for the Rock to come back and actually score, but they never got possession back, I don't think. They tried to, and it just never happened. So the Nighthawks were able to basically just run out the rest of the game, and that was it. One other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll let you guys talk. Toronto had a buzzer beater to end actually both the second and the third quarters, but the one ending the second quarter, Rob Hellier, I think it was Hellier, or was it Hickey? I think it was Hickey. Sorry, my mistake. It was Hickey. Grabbed the ball, sort of spun around to get away from the defender, and fired the shot just before the buzzer went. And it was not clear. It was actually called a goal at the time, saying that the goal had beat the buzzer, and then the refs went and reviewed it, and the call was inconclusive. And as you were watching the show, or watching the broadcast, you could see the time clock in the corner, and as they zoom in to see what Hickey's doing, you lost sight of the clock. So by the time you see the actual shot, you can't see the clock, and you can't tell how close it was. But we have a picture, and I'm going to see if I can try and bring the picture up. Except I don't know how to do that. That's not it. Sorry, I'm new to this part of it. That's the one. This picture right here. So if you can see, on the right is a green light, and that in this arena, and I think in many others. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Okay. That green light goes on when the timer reaches 0. And you can see at the bottom there's another red circle, and there's the ball, and the ball is clearly not in the net. You can see Hickey is on his follow-through. The ball is on the way to this tiny, tiny little corner that it is eventually going to go into. But that green light's already on, which means that the timer has already run out. So we know that this goal, there we are, was scored after the buzzer. But for some reason, when they did the review, they either ignored that green light, or maybe they're not allowed to use that. I don't know why, but maybe there could be something about that light is not available in all the arenas, so they can't trust it, or something. But in any case, they allowed the goal. The review said it was inconclusive, so the goal on the floor stands. So the goal counted. Thanks to Brad MacArthur for that picture, by the way, because he tweeted that at shortly after the game ended. Anyway, I've been talking for a while. Melissa, what did you think?
Quick question on the picture. What is that tied to the shot clock, or is it tied to the game clock? Because that could have caused it some difference, since I think they were relying on the game clock.
That would be the game clock, and that's another weird thing that I'm confused about, and I've asked this before. When we're down to less than 30 seconds in in a quarter, and there's a shot clock reset, they don't reset the shot clock. They just set it to 30 and turn it off, or they set it to 0 and turn it off. But you'll even hear that on the broadcast. The shot clock is off because there's only 20 seconds left in the quarter. Well, why don't they synchronize the shot clock with the game clock? Because when you're a player on the field, you're used to looking at that shot clock to see how much time we have. If there's 3 seconds left, I have time to pass it to somebody else. If the shot clock is at 1, I better shoot it now because I don't have time to pass it to anybody. I don't have time to take a couple steps to try and get a better position. But if there's only 2 or 3 seconds left in the quarter and the shot clock says 30, you don't know that. You can't see the game clock from there. So I don't know why they don't synchronize the two. And then when you're looking to see if you've got time, you'll just look at the shot clock. And regardless of whether it's 5 minutes left in the quarter or 10 seconds, the shot clock always tells you. But they don't do that. They just turn the shot clock off. Sorry, Melissa, keep going.
Well, no, I asked, which kind of led that into it, because I could see, because that being tied to the shot clock or something, maybe that actually was giving a false representation. there was definitely a couple controversial calls I know in this game, and that's kind of what you expect. The Mammoth got kicked out on a controversial call one year. That's just the nature of the game. The refs are humans, and like them or not, they're here to stay. I thought it was pretty crazy. Brandon Miller faced 57 shots compared to Matt Vince's 44. So the fact that Miller did stop as many as he did was pretty good. Although it did seem like Rochester was shooting off net quite a bit too. This was definitely another exciting game. Towards the end, you really just didn't know who was going to win. It seemed like the Nighthawks, after Cody Jamieson was lost, had some wind taken out of their sails. Right game this time. But it seems like when they came out after the half, they were fired up again, and like you were saying, Brad Self just came out of nowhere and was really having an impact. And maybe it's because he normally doesn't, that nobody was covering him as well. It was an exciting game. Definitely chippy. As I said, some controversy, but it really makes you excited for next week. In a way, because I definitely have a love-hate with the current playoff format, but the way these two games have gone really makes me excited for next week, in the same token that it frustrates me. So next week's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I don't have much else to add because you kind of covered a lot of it. What about you, Jim?
Just to echo the rest of what you two have said, it was I haven't seen the game all the way through. I did catch a highlight package of Dan Dawson's goal at the end, and that was quite a goal. I think he's being modest to say he got lucky with that loose ball, because he just outworked a couple of guys in front of the net and found a way to make it happen, which is what he does. What I did see was really good lacrosse again, which was excellent. Again, you can't really ask for anything more than a game that comes down to the final minute. That's exciting stuff in any sport. So that was great. But I think my takeaway from the game, and Brad Self stepping up the way he did when Jamieson went down, says a great deal about just the nature of the Rochester Nighthawks. There's a reason why they've won 3 championships in a row. They find ways to win, and if somebody isn't having the game they need to have, somebody else finds a way to step up. So they're a dangerous, dangerous team at this time of year. I've been impressed with how Toronto's been playing all year long. I had a lot of question marks about them going into the season with Colin Doyle out and Garrett Billings out. I wasn't sure how their defense was going to gel. And then, of course, there was the question of what they were going to do goaltending-wise, which worked out very well for them. So all those things really fell into place for them really well. They were right in that game from start to finish. Like they got a little bit behind there early on, but they managed to battle right back again. So I don't know who's going to win next week, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
All right, we have a couple of comments from Tyler, which he left for us. His first comment was that Rochester showed some incredible resilience when Jammer went down, which is absolutely true. Like actually Dawson said that at the end of the game, that they rely on Jamieson. He actually called him the best player in the world, which is arguable, but you could certainly make a case for it. But he said, this one was for Jammer, so that they rely on him. He goes down, they come together, and like you said, somebody else steps up, or in this case, a lot of people step up. Another thing Tyler mentioned, which I forgot about, is that Toronto had a couple of weeks off thanks to the bye week last weekend. But with the league rules say that they were not allowed to practice during that bye week, and I don't understand that at all. Why would they be prevented from practicing? I mean, it's one thing to have earned, if you want to call it that, earned the bye week, in that they get, if you have any injured players, it was certainly good for Rob Hellier to get an extra week to rest up and stuff after coming back from injury, and Doyle for that matter. So if first place earns them a bye week, why would you punish them by not letting them practice? I don't really get that. Either of you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this either. that really surprised me. That it seemed like they were almost penalized for winning, and it makes me wonder if Edmonton was in the same boat. It definitely would have influenced my picks if I would have known that. Um, it's hard because I know the rule is in place to balance the teams that have pretty much all their players within driving distance versus those that don't have them. But it really seems like they need to figure out something for this because it is a hindrance, and it is unfair that Toronto won, and so hey, nope, sorry, you can't practice. You definitely saw the impact of it, I think. Do you have anything to add, Jim?
Not much. Again, I would say I'm a little surprised that such a rule is in place because that I would say is an opportunity for a team to get together and work on some things that they need to iron out before they get into their part of the playoffs. Not letting them have that chance, that doesn't seem right to me in any way, shape, or form. Teams work best when they have a chance to practice, and if you're taking away opportunities to do that, that to me is an issue that they need to look at going forward. Again, Toronto did get down a little bit early, but they didn't really seem too far out of sync all that game. The same thing seemed to hold for Edmonton. They got out in their game fairly quickly, again, in spite of having Robert Church on the shelf. So I guess they didn't show a lot of rust, but who knows what they could have shown as first-place teams if they had a chance to work on some things and make sure that they were ready to go.
All right. Our predictions from last week. What did we do last week? I went 2-0. Look at that. Which puts me at 3-1 overall in the playoffs. So I did pick Rochester win, and I did say that I hoped that I was wrong, but fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, I was right. Tyler picked Toronto to win, so he got that one wrong, but he also picked Edmonton, so he is now 1-1. He was 1-1 last week, putting him at 1-3 overall. And Melissa, you nailed them both, not so much. 0-2 last week, but that you were 2-0 the previous week, so you're now 2-2, so that's not bad. So we'll head to round 2 for our playoff picks. We don't have picks from Tyler yet, but we'll get some from him and try to tweet them out or add them to the blog or something so that we can get his picks out there before the games actually happen. Otherwise, he'll just go 2-0 for sure. Melissa, why don't you go first? I just to make it a little easier, I figured we would just pick who do we think is going to win this series, rather than I guess if you pick Toronto, you assume they're going to win Game 2 and the mini game, whereas if you pick Rochester, maybe they'll win Game 2, maybe they'll lose Game 2 but win the mini game. And rather than try to make it specific that way, we'll just pick who's going to win the series. Melissa, what do you think?
All right. It really seems to me like the Game 2 seems to be the more important of the games, and you just take that momentum and go into the overtime and end up taking it. So that's how I looked at both my choices. It was really tough between Rochester and Toronto because I know it's going to be close, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes into overtime before it goes into mini game, whatever they're calling it now. But I think Toronto's going to take it. The fact that it's going to be played there, I think, is going to help them. I think the fact that they just played is going to help them, knowing that they had the bye week before. I think everything's going to be in their favor, and they're going to be able to have that momentum. And I expect Rochester's going to be without Cody Jamieson again. So, yes, we saw other players step up, but still, you're without one of your top players in a very crucial game. So I'm going to go with Toronto. Edmonton and Calgary, I am going to go with Edmonton. Kind of the same thing. My husband and I are always liking to joke because for the longest time, the Arizona String were always described as they're a young team, they like to run, and that's kind of how I see this Edmonton team. When the other team starts burning out, they still got gas in the tank, and they're revving to go, and so they just put it on towards the end of the game, and it's like, oh, guess it really wasn't going to be as close. So I think for Edmonton, that's actually going to help them take both games since they're going to just have that extra energy that I don't know Calgary has. What about you, Jim? Who do you think is going to take it?
Well, starting in the East, if Jameson is on the shelf, I would be inclined to agree with you, Melissa, that I don't know that they have the horses to pull this off all the way. They really showed the perseverance last night by winning without him, but that puts a big hole in their offense, and I don't know if they can do that for another 75 minutes, if that's what it takes. So that could be a real challenge for them, especially because it leaves them so short-handed with left-handed sticks. So my gut feeling is that Toronto will probably squeeze that one out. But having said that, again, Rochester's looking for a fourth straight championship, so that could be the X factor, that they have that experience as a team. They know how to get there, so they might just find a way. But I'm going to go with Toronto. On the other side, I'm going to agree with you that Edmonton, to me, for the last couple of years, has just seemed like a juggernaut. I don't think that as good as Calgary's offense is, that they necessarily have an answer for Edmonton's defense. And if Robert Church is coming back, and that sounded like the word in the game Friday night when they were talking, that he should be good to go for next week. If Edmonton's offense is all the way back next week, I'm not sure that Calgary can match them goal for goal. The other part of that, just Mark Matthews is so talented that I don't think that he can be contained. What did he have? 7 points on Friday night. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see that happen again. If he's got more people to feed and more people to give him an opportunity to find space, Calgary's defense is going to be in tough, and when they're in tough, they make mistakes and take bad penalties as a general rule. So I'm looking for the Rush to be going to the Champions Cup.
All right. Like I said, we don't have Tyler's picks, but so far it looks unanimous among the three of us anyway. I actually did have Rochester down here up until a few minutes ago, but I've changed my mind. I'm hoping it's not just a homer pick because I'm a Rock fan, but I'm going to pick Toronto in this in the Eastern Final. And yeah, like I said, I was going back and forth. The fact that Jameson is out, and I agree with what you guys said, that Rochester pulled it off without him. Because they had to. Now they'll have a week to prepare. This is, like I said, on the assumption that Jameson is out. They'll have a week to prepare and get their offense ready, knowing that he's not going to be there. But they've been assuming he's there for the past 3 seasons, and assuming that he's running the whole show for the past 3 seasons. So now they have to rejigger everything to play without him. And I'm not sure how well they can do that in a week. And the fact that Toronto was certainly in that game and didn't show an awful lot of rust after having the 2 weeks off and no time to practice, I think that will give them some confidence. Colin Doyle played really well. Rob Hellier played really well. So the fact that they have those 2 guys back and at what looks like 100% or pretty close to it, that'll also give them confidence. And they'll have the home crowd as well, so that I think will help. So I'm going to go with Toronto on that. Edmonton, Calgary, yeah, what you guys said. Calgary managed to stop the Edmonton juggernaut, as you put it, Jim, last year and go to the finals. I'm not sure they can do that again this year. Mark Matthews was very good last year. He's actually been very good in all of his seasons. I think this is his 3rd. But he went from very good to holy crap this year. And yeah, I mean, as good as Sean Evans is, he's also holy crap good. I think Edmonton's just a more complete team, and I'm looking forward to an Edmonton-Toronto final. Yeah, so I guess that is it for us. I'm hoping to get Tyler's picks at some point soon. We'll, like I said, we'll tweet those out or blog them or something. But that's about it for this episode. AddictedToLacrosse.com is where you want to go for all of our old shows. This one will be up there in an hour or two. If you want to get a hold of us for any comments or questions, Lax Podcast on Twitter is where you can find us. You can also send us email at feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. Or we're on Facebook as well, facebook.com/laxpodcast. That's about it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Jim and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.